my life is quite full. I probably didn't even realize just how full it was until after the diagnosis, because I was too busy living it, right? I had my family and my kids and grandkids. I had a job that was custom made for me. I had an opportunity to travel all over the place for work, and with the miles that I earned there, it's the best of both worlds. So I earned miles that the company paid for, which I got to use to then take the family on vacations. And I had an opportunity to go all around Latin America and through Europe and North America, and it's just ideal. I was at the top of my game. I was an expert in my field in payments and banking technology, and everything was hitting on all cylinders. There we are. There's quite an adventurous life at that. And the best part of it is I had season tickets to USF when USF was actually winning football games. So that was always a plus. And at that point in my life that you start to think ahead and you start making plans, you dare think ahead to retirement, when things can slow down. Maybe you get that rocking chair and you and your wife can sip margaritas in your front porch. Hopefully not develop into the cranky old man, get the ball off my lawn kind of guy. And as John Lennon said, though, life is what happens to us while we're busy making other plans. And boy, did life happen quite unexpectedly. But so it goes. Next slide, please. We all remember the day of our diagnosis. And one thing that I always found interesting, especially as I talk to other folks that have gone through it, is that so much of the emphasis is on the physical impact. That is terminal, shortens our life expectancy, that is degenerative. And we all know these things by heart. I didn't realize this right away, but shortly thereafter, I started thinking, well, that's really nothing new. Life is a terminal disease. We're all immortal. Life expectancy is just simply a mathematical average added into some probabilities, because tomorrow's not guaranteed to anybody. And if you don't think it's true, many of you are going to be driving I-4 after you leave here. So tell me about life expectancy after that. And aging is degenerative. We lose muscle tone, metabolism doesn't work as well as it used to. We lose our mind, we lose our teeth, we lose our hair. And so that was really nothing new. What was new is that we didn't really go around thinking about these things every single morning when we woke up. All of a sudden it became obsessive, front and center, every single moment of our day. And then that transfers into our emotional and our mental state. We're anxious and lost and worried. We're angry. We're fearful. We're scared. And so when we talk about an ALS diagnosis, it's important to not lose sight on the fact that this is not just simply a physical impact. It is a complete impact in all phases of our lives. So that's our starting point. We can only go up from here, right? Next slide. I don't know about you, but every morning I was consumed with, now what? And your questions may be a little different. I just took the liberty to jot down some of the ones that came to mind. What's going to happen to my family? Will I become a burden to them? One of my favorite ones, am I going to be around long enough to see some of the family milestones, weddings, college graduations, other kids? How will it affect us financially if I'm not working? This is not a cheap disease. Are any of my friends going to come visit me? Or will they go on with their lives and I'll be left behind? There's so many of these questions, and every morning we all thought about them, probably several more. This is just a very short list, quite frankly. And you feel lost. It's this sort of storm of questions, and the questions seem so big, and we can't answer them. Not easily, anyway. Next slide, please. So this is what happens. Oh, there we go. We come to a complete stop. We stop living. Our heartbeats continue. We're still alive, but in our minds it's hard to visualize anything beyond. And we come to a complete stop. We're sort of frozen and paralyzed in time. It doesn't have to be that way, however. We actually stopped. Our disease didn't stop us. Us, mentally, we stopped. We might start feeling like we're giving up, and we stop putting living into our daily lives. Next slide. Next slide, please. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to allow ourselves to go forward. We're going to give ourselves a green light. And I don't want to sound like a Hallmark card. But really and truly, we need to understand that if we woke up this morning, we had an extra day. And if we wake up tomorrow, we have one more day. And if we wake up tomorrow, the day after that, we have one more day. We are alive. We still have lives to live. We still have a lot that we can accomplish. We don't need to be stuck in one place, kind of like in quicksand, in our own agony, in our own self-pity. We got a lot to live for, a lot that we're still capable of doing. So when we look at our lives, we should not be looking at it with regret over what has been lost, but with a renewed determination to reach for what's within us to achieve. I'm going to let that slide sit there for a second so you can digest that. Next. Next slide. There you go. Thank you. So let's break this down. One of my favorite phrases is, the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. My wife hates that phrase. And she told me that if I said it, she would heckle me. So if you hear somebody, that's her. But it's so true. When I was working, anytime we had a crisis, and everybody go, what are we going to do? This breakdown, this software, this, that, or the other. It's like, stop. Let's break it down into manageable pieces. Because if we're so focused on the elephant, we'll never be able to get through that in just one chunk. We've got to be able to then break it down. And so I propose a different set of questions than the ones we saw before. And I'm a big fan of starting from ground zero, from the beginning. We start with the foundation. Who are we? What are our roles? We're still parents. We're still friends. We're still neighbors. What's important to us? And that should reflect how I spend my time. How do I want to be remembered? I don't say this from a morbid standpoint, but we still have lessons to teach others, and we're in a perfect opportunity to pass on lessons to our friends, our families, our children, on how people deal with adversity, how you get yourself up, how you face the day. And long after I'm gone, if my kids are ever in a situation where they're faced with some kind of adversity, I would love for them to look at it and say, I know how my father did it, and I want to follow that example. And that's the best thing that I can leave behind for my kids. and my grandkids. And then we look at each day. What do I want to accomplish today? Am I going to spend all day in bed? Am I going to be able to then be active? I'm going to do something today. And what is that objective? How can I achieve it? And what are some of the limitations that I have? This is not an exercise in denial. It is an exercise in understanding what I can accomplish, understanding the limitations, and then figure out how I bridge that gap, how I adapt. Next. So now let's take a look at that phrase again, but from a different perspective. I am. That's got to be the easiest sentence in the English language. And yet for millennia, people have figured out a way to debate what the heck that means. And there are folks going around in Athens in togas, scratching their beards, just wondering all day what that meant. For me, it means this is the core of what makes us human. It's our ability to be aware, not to ignore it, not to wallow, to be aware of my environment and my limitations. To understand that I'm constantly changing. We're not the same folks we were when we were teenagers. We're not the same when we were single than after we got married. We're not definitely the same before we had kids or after we had kids, that's for sure. We're constantly changing. This is the next phase. And I am a person, which means I am the sum of my experiences. I am the roles that I adopt throughout my life. And those roles have changed. They're not the same roles I had, when I was studying or where I was working in a supermarket putting myself through college. Certainly not the same role I had when I was, working out in corporate America. But I don't forget those experiences, and I don't forget those feelings, and I don't forget the lessons that I've learned from those experiences. I carry them forward to make me the person that I am today. And I am certainly living. Because living is how we grow as people, and we're not done growing. We have a disease. It doesn't negate everything else. It doesn't negate the experiences we have. It doesn't negate the people that we are. We're still living. We're still growing. And I want to emphasize something. Living is an action verb. We're not existing or surviving. It's not something that happens to us. It's something that we do. And yes, with ALS, because we're not in denial. We're not walking around pretending that we're not where we are, but we acknowledged it. And we understand what we still are able to do, because I guarantee you every single one of you can still do something. Every single one of you still has a lot of life in you, in whatever form that takes. And we understand our limitations, but we're willing to bridge the gap. Next slide, please. So let's hit some reset button. I put down some things for me. But, maybe if not now, when you get home, maybe do this exercise. As a person, who are you? What are your roles? So, I'm a husband. That didn't change before diagnosis till after diagnosis. I'm still have those responsibilities. And I'm still a dad, and I'm still a grandfather. I'm a son. My 84-year-old mom, 84 years old, and she drives 40 minutes each way so that she can, twice a week, so that she can make me some good Puerto Rican cooking, because she heard that keeping up my weight was important, and she wants to be a part of it. And she'll make that drive, and she'll cook for me so that she can keep me fat. And I'm a friend, and I'm a colleague, not only to my fellow board members, but to so many other folks in the ALS community. And I'm still a sports fan, not as happy as I used to be a few years ago, but I'm still a sports fan. And a traveler. And I'm obviously still a speaker. I'm not talking about the payment industry and the latest and contactless forms of payment or whatnot. But I'm still doing something I very much enjoy. And there are a few things that I don't do anymore. Some of them I think my neighbors are very happy with, because I can't play guitar anymore. I can't go out, take pictures, and do some of those things. But I've added some stuff. Because we're changing and we grow, because we're living. And so I'm a student. I take an introduction to philosophy class. And just to make it a lot more fun, I do it in Portuguese. Because I still want to keep my Portuguese that I learned many, many years ago when I lived out in Brazil for a couple years. And I'm an advocate. I'm a volunteer. I'm a mentor. And I guarantee you that if you were to make this list, you'd come up with a whole bunch of other things. Things that you're still doing. Things that you still are. And even some new things that if you just dared a little bit, you realize you can still do. Because we are living. And the first thing about living is we have to decide to do it. And then we engage, and we grow, and we learn. We make a plan. We seek help because we don't have to do this alone. But that should not be an impediment. Most of us have a great support group around us. And we adapt and we socialize, and by God, have some fun, laugh. And when you get a moment, pray, meditate, reflect. Be thankful. And in our lives with ALS, a whole other series of considerations. How do I participate in my care? What's the right equipment at the proper time? It's so important because we don't want to be taking risk falling. We don't want to be taking anything that is unnecessary that derail our mission to live our full life. We want to make sure that we thank our caregivers. We ask for help. I'm horrible at that one. We've got to incorporate all these things, not deny them, incorporate them, because the moment that we do, we can then maximize that living. We can bring it up a notch in that font size and elevate that word within that phrase. Next slide, please. So my set of pictures looks a little different than it did before, but it's still just as full. As I said before, I still travel, and I still engage, and I interact with my family. My grandson is one of my biggest helpers. And yeah, I'm still a geek, and I go to the Renaissance Festival, so what? Everybody has their dirty secret. And I still go to the football games, and I still go to the walks, and I still talk and engage with other folks that are going through the same thing that I was going through. And yeah, I made a TV appearance here or there. Got to throw that in, my 15 minutes of fame, right? And all of that just to say that at the end of the day, maybe the phrase should be a little different. And maybe the phrase should be, I'm a person living who happens to have ALS. Because the emphasis is on that first part of that sentence, isn't it? I am a person living. And so are you. So are all of us. And we do it together through our support system. We do it together through our community. We do it together because we decide to do so. Next slide. So I want to leave you with one last thought I saw this quote and I thought I was like tailor-made for my presentation today. I thought of my new uncertainty. How long can I live with ALS? We've all been there. I thought, don't search for answers. Live the question. Enjoy life more because of the uncertainty, not less. Because quite frankly, I don't know that at any other period in my life have I felt that my life was more valuable and that my time was more critical than it is right now, in this time after my diagnosis. Next slide. And so with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for your time and attention today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference. Thanks a lot.